Hello everyone! I welcome to the studio here today Miss Debbie Dokas, General Manager of Apex Debt Management, who comes to us with an awareness campaign to help the Russian community in dealing with the second devastating pandemic crippling Canada today, and that is debt. Hi Debbie!
Hi Maxim, thank you very much for having me here. First of all, thank you for recognizing that the Russian community today and all other communities in Canada are indeed suffering heavily from the effects of COVID and are struggling with debt. And secondly, thank you for helping me to raise awareness for all those people that there are options out there for them. There are government programs designed to forgive and eliminate those debts while maintaining their assets and giving them the chance to get back on their feet again.
Indeed, our community is suffering from debt's catastrophic grip, particularly due to COVID. Tell us a little of how you witness financial problems affecting people now.
That's a good question. Unfortunately, I bear witness every day to the devastating effects that stress has on people. Heart attacks, strokes, separations, divorce, depression, anxiety, drug and alcohol abuse, just to name a few. It's devastating. Professionals are linking these alarming rates due to financial stress. You see, in this country, it's very easy to get into debt because it's very easy to borrow the money. Unlike back home, all you need is a pulse to borrow money. The banks, the credit card companies, they all line up to give you money and you find yourself in debt.
Absolutely.
And then when COVID hits and people find themselves with lowered incomes or complete loss of income, now they have to borrow more just to survive. And that's when the trouble starts, because then they stop lending money, they're in serious amounts of debt, the creditors are calling, and they're facing bankruptcy. But especially for Russian people, they are a proud people. And to go bankrupt is the ultimate shame. I get it. I too was raised the same way. Admitting that you have a debt problem is as bad as saying that you have a drinking and a gambling problem. Ya Makedonets, ya Horisho Ponimayo. It's shame.
So Debbie, what then is your message to my Russian people here today? How can you help them?
My message here today, Maxim, is that I have programs that will eliminate and forgive those debts that are stressing people. People need to leave a legacy for their family. The only thing people should be worried about is taking care of their family, their loved ones, and their children. And they worry that when they go bankrupt and they lose it all, they have no more legacy, they lose their family, and they lose their loved ones. We can help. The Canadian federal government has created economic stimulus programs for everyone that will eliminate and forgive their debts without losing their assets. You see, the government doesn't want people and businesses going bankrupt. When people go bankrupt, they stop spending. When businesses go bankrupt, they stop hiring people. The problem is, especially for immigrants, that they are completely unaware of these programs and don't know that they have this help available to them and just suffer in silence because that's shame again. So my mission here today, with your help, Maxim, is to raise awareness to these people that they do have help available to them through federal legislation.
So Debbie, you are telling that when people or businesses are drowning in debt, you can use government programs to eliminate or forgive the debt. But isn't it actually the same that trustees in bankruptcy do?
Absolutely not. We are nothing like trustees in bankruptcy. Yes, trustees, insolvency trustees they're called now, can eliminate your debt. The difference is when they eliminate your debt through either a bankruptcy or a consumer proposal, they take all of your assets. We do not. They cannot represent you because they are mandated by law to actually represent the creditors. Their job is to collect as much money from their clients for the creditors as possible. Last year, over 150,000 Canadians filed for bankruptcy when they didn't have to. Look, I know this is incredibly hard to believe, especially for Russian Canadians, that the government is willing to forgive your debt, especially when accumulating that debt was your own fault. But you have to think of it this way. When you look at what happens to the average person when they're willing to go bankrupt, they stop contributing to the economy. Not only that, all of those other things that we just talked about begins to happen. They get sick physically and mentally. Then they lose the ability to work and so on. It's a domino effect. Then the government has to step in to help them in other ways. Things like employment insurance, disability programs, mental health programs. And when you look at the overall cost of that, it far outweighs the cost of forgiving a little bit of debt. The same applies to businesses. If businesses go bankrupt, all of those Canadians are unemployed, and the same pattern happens, then they need assistance from the government. And when you look at the big picture, it's a little bit of short-term pain for long-term gain. It's worth it for the government to forgive the debts now and avoid paying billions in social programs later.
Wow. I had no idea that trustees do not work with the debtors. This all makes sense now. Can you please tell me, Debbie, what do people do when they find themselves in a serious financial trouble? Who do they call?
That part's easy, Maxim. They just call me. The process is completely confidential. I only need their first name. Once I can speak with them, I can run the diagnostics to see if they qualify for the program. There is absolutely no charge for this service. It's purely informative, because that way they can find if they do qualify and they can make a better informed decision down the road. Unfortunately, Maxim, this is something that people cannot do on their own. There's no easy link or website to go to figure it out by yourself. I, along with my team of experts, including our court-appointed officer with parliamentary powers, can implement the legislation for them if they qualify to eliminate and forgive the debts, because we've been doing it successfully for over 23 years now.
Well, one last question for you, Debbie. Since these are government programs, will it take a long time to process the file for your client?
Absolutely not, Maxim. What you need to understand is we are on a rescue mission, and when people are failing with debt and stressed with debt, they need emergency services. We are able to process a file and trigger protection from creditors in a matter of days, and in extreme cases, we've been able to do it in a matter of hours.
How does going through this process affect your credit rating?
That's a very frequently asked question, and it's kind of a funny one, because most of the people that come to us for help already are in so much debt that the creditors are calling, they're losing sleep at night, and some of them are in the process of being sued. So when they worry about their credit rating, I sometimes have to stop them and say, what's your credit rating right now? And unfortunately, for some reason, it becomes a little bit delusional, and people are very focused in on this credit rating, and they say, well, I think my credit rating is good. And then I ask a basic question. What do you have a credit rating for? And everyone, of course, answers, well, to borrow money. So then I ask a second question, and I say, well, are the banks loaning you any more money right now? Oh, God, no, of course, they won't loan me anything. Can you get a credit card today? Will the credit card companies loan you money? No, of course not. They won't loan me anything. I said, then what does your credit rating have to do with it? Because the only difference here is that it's already shot. You just haven't admitted it to yourself. But to address the question for people that are concerned about building their credit again, by going through and using this federal legislation, they have the opportunity to start rebuilding their credit immediately, as opposed to going through bankruptcies and consumer proposals where it takes 5 to 7 years to be able to start building credit.
Tell me, please, Debbie, how many people or maybe companies have you already helped?
We have, as of today, processed over 7,500 cases.
7,000?
7,500 with 100% success rate. You see, a file is not finished until the client is explained everything that's going to happen, and it's up to them whether or not they want to proceed. So I don't know how many other agencies out there can say that they have a 100% success rate, but that is a fact for us.
Very impressive.
Thank you.
Debbie, why don't too many people know about these programs?
That is still a mystery to me, Maxim. You would think that when the federal government creates something this significant for people, that they would let them know about it. I think what has happened in this country is insolvency trustees have taken over the market. It simply comes down to marketing. 20 years ago, they started changing their strategies, and you can see billboards anywhere. I'm sure even you can sing the jingles in your brain.
Yeah,
Not sleeping at night, debt, come to us. And people are afraid of the big B word, bankruptcy. So now they talk about proposals, like a marriage proposal, like they're going to help you. So people don't understand that these insolvency trustees, first of all, don't work for them. But because there's no advertising in any other way, they don't know where to go. What's essential to understand here that most people don't recognize is when you have a financial problem, you actually have a legal problem. So when you stop paying and the company sends your debts to creditors to collection agencies, that becomes a legal problem because eventually they will take you to court to get their money. Mm-hmm. And the funny part is, in this country, if you get hit by a car, you will go to a lawyer for help. If you get cut off of your disability payments at work, you will go to a lawyer for help. But when you're in financial trouble, you end up going to an insolvency trustee who's actually like the prosecutor. It's like needing a lawyer, but instead you're going to the prosecutor for help. So I think the legal profession has abandoned Canadians on this because the legal profession should be advertising, should be promoting, this is a legal problem. Financial problems are legal problems. You need to come to us. But the legal profession has forsaken Canadians in this respect, and I simply don't know why.
Yeah, it's a big mystery.
It's a big mystery.
Debbie, tell me please, how do these options change people's lives?
It's phenomenal. Let's start back with the profile of what the average person looks like under financial stress. Statistics are coming out now, particularly after a year of COVID, and the rates are alarming in what's happening to people's physical and mental health. On the radio the other day, they were discussing top 10 reasons why people can't sleep at night. Guess what the number one reason was?
Debt.
Financial stress, right? So when we are done processing a file, you have never seen a transformation in a human being like this in your life. We have people with tears in their eyes thanking us because now they can start over again. The shame is over. They have a legacy for their family. They can continue to take care of their family or their business or whatever it happens to be. And it's a sense of relief. That's the very rewarding part of my job, I have to say, is helping people.
Absolutely. How about big businesses? Do they qualify too?
Oh my goodness, do they qualify? Of course they do, because you have to think of, again, going back to why the government has developed this legislation to forgive debts, right? Because when people go bankrupt, they don't contribute to the economy. When corporations go bankrupt, thousands of people lose their jobs. And that's all the domino and exponential effect of what happens. So we deal a lot with big corporations. As a matter of fact, currently we eliminate about $10 million of corporate debt per month. This is why I've launched this awareness to get the other people besides the corporations, because our focus has been mainly corporate, but the legislation is the same for both. And if you want to understand how it works for corporations better, take a big corporation such as Komatsu. They deal in heavy equipment. So they lease their heavy equipment. Sometimes these pieces are worth $500,000, $1 million each. These sub-corporations or small companies are leasing this equipment. When they miss a payment, it's a red flag for Komatsu. They're not doing well. That usually means that business has serious debts. So Komatsu calls us in, and we deal with all of their leasers. We eliminate the debt for them because leasing is secured. We eliminate that company's unsecured debt and put them back into a position where they continue to pay Komatsu, so Komatsu doesn't have to repossess the equipment for 10 cents on the dollar. So you see, everybody wins. Komatsu continues to get paid, the business stays in business, and those 100 employees keep their jobs. So you see how the government investing a little bit in eliminating that debt saves the billions in social programs they would need to support those unemployed people later down the road.
Debbie, tell me, please, how about legacy, pride, or let's say confidentiality? Is the participation is going to be broadcasted all over the news?
Oh my goodness, never, no. This is a completely confidential process, not just for private individuals, but for corporations alone. People will never know that we just eliminated $300 million for a large corporation. It is not public news. It is very confidential. And when you bring it back down to a personal level for families, people can maintain their legacies. They can keep their pride. They don't have to tell anybody, because we certainly don't tell anybody, and it's no one else's business.
Good to know. Debbie, can you tell me please how much debt, well, in average, Apex eliminate per month?
On average, as of today, we eliminate approximately $10 million worth of debt every month.
Well, sounds impressive.
It is.
How do people usually learn about you? What are your referral sources, let's say?
You see, the unusual thing for us, because we are so specialized, is we don't advertise. We have a huge referral source quite often, and it's from a variety of places. Quite often we have a lot of referrals from accountants, because accountants are front line when it comes to people and their money and businesses and their money. And as soon as they start to see them going into the red, they refer them to us in-house. It's a very comfortable transfer. We help them out, eliminate their debt, put them back on their feet again. The accountant is happy. We do the same with mortgage brokers. That's another huge referral source for us, especially today where people are out of options to borrow money, but they have huge equity in their homes. They don't necessarily want to move, so they go to a mortgage broker to refinance, to try to squeeze some money out of the house to pay off those debts, but the debts are simply too heavy. Instead of the mortgage broker having to give them bad news and saying, sorry, can't help you, the mortgage broker refers them to us. We eliminate that unsecured debt. They keep the equity in their home. They keep their assets. And now they can go back to the same mortgage broker, refinance, and get some money out of the house. Everybody wins. Everybody's a hero. So we've actually had even CRA call us directly to rescue some extreme cases.
Why would they do this?
Why would they do this? In particular, we just rescued a local business that employed 50 people. They were over $3 million in debt to CRA because, see, when businesses start to fail, they stop. They're supposed to be giving source deductions and HST payments to the government, but they keep them in order to survive. And before they know it, there's $3 million in debt to CRA. CRA wants their money, they're going to shut them down. In COVID times, they don't want to shut them down. So they say to us, please rescue these people. They're 2 weeks away from being shut down. We do not want 50 full-time unemployed people during COVID. So we do. And no one knows.
Debbie, can you please walk me through the steps when the person decides to call you? What happens after it?
It's pretty straightforward, actually. So as I said before, the first step is to simply call me in a phone call. It takes about 10 minutes for me to run some basic diagnostics. It's completely confidential. I never ask for a last name or any personal information. I ask for a couple of numbers that I need in order to determine whether or not they qualify. We run these numbers through our experts to make sure, yes, they do indeed qualify. At that point, we meet with the client. It used to be in person, but now because of COVID, we do it over Zoom meetings. The client meets directly with our court-appointed officer, part of our expert team, that has parliamentary powers to designate this legislation for them. Once he sees the numbers, and again, first name only, it's purely confidential with no charge to the client all the way up until this point. Once he sees those numbers, and we call it a blessing, he blesses the file and says, yes, we will file this. The legislation says it qualifies. That's the point that the client decides, okay, let's do it, let's move forward.
Can a client just call you or maybe go to a website?
The client can go to the website that we're providing through the interview there to get an idea of what it is that we do. But ultimately, a 10-minute phone call to me is what begins the process.
I believe it's a very important question for new Canadians. Should a person who calls you to be a citizen or not?
No, it is absolutely not required that you are a Canadian citizen. If your debt was incurred in Canada, that qualifies. As a matter of fact, one of my most recent clients was somebody from the old country who had a failed business, had been living in Canada for 5 years. The business failed. He accumulated hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of debt he knew he would never be able to pay off. And thinking like we do from old country, he thought they would put him in jail, so he left. He went back to his home country and he's scared to return. We are now in the process of supplying him with a moratorium and the paperwork he needs to be able to come back to Canada safely, to put him at ease, to let him know no one's throwing you in jail, you qualify for the programs, come back, we will eliminate your debt, and you can sleep at night again.
Wonderful. Debbie, my last, but I believe the most important question. How much does it cost to eliminate your debts?
That is my most favorite question because I love the way we do things, because we base our fee on the client's ability to pay. And what I mean by that exactly is once they find out that they qualify for the program, the government sets the schedule of how this is done, and we base our fee on their ability to pay. So if I go to the extreme of a corporation, and if we eliminate $200 million of debt for a corporation, you better believe they have money to pay us. However, when we are doing personal, private cases, we, especially in the cases of a single parent, single mom or dad, especially veterans, we have a soft spot for veterans, and Indigenous people, because we work closely with the Indigenous communities. When these cases are severe and they have so much debt and sometimes zero income, zero assets, what are they going to pay us with? They have nothing. So we process those files for free.
I have read, I believe, about one case you did for Indigenous community people, yeah.
Well, the Indigenous, what we did for the Six Nations people, that was big. We eliminated $200 million of debt with the federal government. As a matter of fact, the owner and operator of our country was awarded an honorary eagle feather for having done that for them. And that's an honor that's been bestowed to only 3 Canadians in the history of Canada, non-Indigenous, and he's a Polak. I think the other 2 are dead, unfortunately. So he's the only living Canadian that can actually say he has been given the honorary eagle feather for doing so. So we continue to work very closely with our Indigenous friends as well.
Well, this has been very informative indeed, Debbie. Thank you very much. I am pleased to be a part of any awareness campaign that I'm sure will help my Russian community and any others in Canada. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Maxim, for helping me to raise that awareness. I look forward to helping out many, many people in the Russian community.